There are only a handful of video games that feel like they really have something meaningful to say about loneliness, and even amongst them, few can compare to the depth of suffering and struggle depicted in REFLEXIA Prototype version. From the very start, REFLEXIA is a dating sim that is surrounded in sadness. Our main love interest is not doing well mentally at all, and subtly alludes to the fact that she hates the role she must play. Throughout the story, we honestly don't act as a dating sim player, but rather as more of a therapist. Thankfully, by the end of the story, we do actually manage to help her work through things, and Reflexia ends up being a powerful story about overcoming feelings of low self-worth that can often push people to feel that loneliness is impossible to escape. The game is only about 45 minutes long and is definitely worth the play, and if you felt that the first line of this video was familiar, it might also interest you to know that this game has an interesting connection to Milk Inside a Bag of Milk's creator as well. But before I get too far into it, please take a moment to read the disclaimer. The game begins with us being greeted by a black and white anime girl with crazy eyes and presents to us 6 different ways to say hello back to her. However, unlike in most dating simulators where only one option can be chosen, after hearing her response, we get to choose another, and then another until we go down the entire list. While doing so, she acknowledges that we are choosing each option, immediately breaking the 4th wall. She also wonders if we're even really there, or if someone just turned on autoplay and let the game run. On some level, I think that the game hits us with these 4th wall breaks to be humorous, but on another level, they're actually quite important for understanding the game. This is obviously not the girl's first rodeo. She has been through the dating sim experience so many times that she understands what each response means and knows that sometimes she isn't even interacting with a person, just talking into the void. How she knows this or why she continues to play along comes later. Despite her doubt, she decides to go ahead with acting out a small scene, a date. You can try and stop her, asking why she's moving so fast. In response, she gives another cynical answer, asking if you'd rather spend an infinite amount of in-game days picking correct options, and questions, why go through all that trouble if you can just get what you want right here, anyhow? You can also question if she's the only love interest, to which she immediately gets upset, saying, "Am I not good enough for you? If you don't like it, you can go read something else." Then, in contrast to her pessimism towards the genre, she expresses her genuine desire to go on a date, more than anyone else. Somewhat randomly, you ask if she's a yandere, which is a Japanese term for a violently possessive girl. She complains that you're compressing her entire character into a single archetype, but decides it might be good, because then you won't be able to get it wrong if it's so simple. We fade to black, and now we're on a date. She comments that visual novel dates are quite convenient, and after another brief 4th wall breaking conversation, we can ask her about her hobbies, to which she says that she likes doing nothing and taking afternoon naps. You question if that's really it, to which she snaps back, "What else am I supposed to strive for when I'm a damn eroge character? Do you expect me to earn a PhD without leaving your screen?" At this point, you should probably get the idea that this dating sim doesn't think very highly of dating sims. Although it might be strong here already, the criticisms the game has of the genre will only get harsher. This will become especially clear with the characterization of our protagonist, now called Yandere-Chan, who is still quite conflicted at this point in the game. She seems to both be trying to have a good time while also being totally uninterested. Perhaps at some point she really did believe in finding love, but now is just going through the motions. In any case, she's decided that she's done with small talk and gets right to the point. Whatever happens, the end will ultimately be the same. Our meeting was bound to happen, although I'm not sure if you're the one, and I don't think I can even ascertain that. My duty is to listen to a love confession and show you a happy end, and then disappear from your screen. In response, you suggest ending the date early. She agrees, apologizes, and then states that there's only one more thing to do: confess your love. Similar to before when she seemed genuinely excited to go on a date, she seems to actually be interested in your confession of love and asks you to say it again. When you oblige her, she smiles, and now it's time to say goodbye. The screen fades to black, but instead of end credits, we are presented with the game's menu renamed to "Please Don't Exit." When you click, she momentarily draws you back in. She begs, "Don't go. Please don't abandon me." But the game continues on, and we're back to the regular main menu. This is our first allusion to what the game is really about. Yandere-Chan obviously doesn't seem to enjoy the experience of a dating sim at all, turning what normally might be a several hour-long process into 5 minutes, but still wants you to say that you love her. She doesn't want you to leave. Even if the confession is fake, it fills the void just enough. In other words, she is so deeply lonely that even if she doesn't think highly of dating sims, she is willing to play the part of a love interest for the smallest crumb of love. Furthermore, she wants to be loved without putting in any effort. Now when we press start, presumably to start another playthrough, we are presented with the same greeting as the first time, except now, Yandere-Chan interrupts the protagonist, who has not yet been renamed, and quickly forces her away. It seems that she refuses to let you go, which is fitting for someone named Yandere-Chan. Now that we've been reunited, we can go on a second date at an amusement park. If you ask about the protagonist she forced away, she pleads not to talk about her, stating, "I'm doing my best to entertain you." After a few more brief conversations, you arrive at the Ferris wheel, where Yandere-Chan once again wants you to confess your love to her. And just like the first time, once is not enough, so you must repeat it again, and again, and again, and again. That is, until she wants you to say it a little differently, with a little bit more romance. But all you can do is repeat the same line. Eventually, after so many repeats, she wants you to stop, likening it to torture to hear. However, if you actually do stop, she begs you not to be silent. This causes her to break down, saying things so fast that it's hard to read, and ends with asking if you hate her. Without even letting you respond, she calls back the other protagonist, obviously defeated, and says, "Someone like me has no right to be with you." It seems that Yandere-Chan's loneliness has driven her to madness and desperation. In the end, she can't even bear to continue with the facade and lets you go. The game will actually touch on this idea later, but I want to point out that Yandere-Chan's begging kind of reminds me not so much of any love interest, but rather that of a desperate player. When she begs you to change the wording of "I love you" and you can't, it almost feels like I'm the one inside the screen, and there's a very lonely person sitting at a desk, expecting something from me. Although, like I said, this won't be fully fleshed out until a little bit later. Once Yandere-Chan disappears, the protagonist takes her place. She asks you to be gentle with her, and then proposes a date. Once again, you give her a Japanese title, Dandere, a shy and closed-off character who only reveals their true self for someone they love. And just like Yandere-Chan, she accepts this new name without too much hesitation. During your date, which is in her room, she makes a comment about the tea, how she can't actually taste anything unless she tricks herself. She also breaks the fourth wall just like Yandere did, albeit with a little bit more pessimism. In the end, I can only exist as a mix of text and pictures. What can a fan service cardboard cutout like me do for you? This whole story is just one big act of self-deceit. Dandere then decides that maybe she doesn't even want to spend 5 minutes here like Yandere did. If my whole existence is centered around showing you a single H scene and then disappearing, I'll have to do it. Then maybe everything will end faster, and I won't suffer anymore. I had a dream, a naive one, finding that one person I could reveal everything about myself to, and showing them even what you'd normally conceal from everyone else. Yet, I'm here. We are now presented with an, albeit censored, H scene in which she blankly stares at the ceiling and laments. My body is for everyone to see. I had nothing to offer apart from that secret. I'm completely useless now. Why am I still alive? Can we get this over with? I need to rest. In response, you can try to tell her that you love her, but she can't really believe that. Although, she appreciates that you're still here, listening to her after all the nasty things she said. She ends off by saying, I won't hold you up. Nobody should be forced to reciprocate someone else's feelings just because they exist. Farewell. This scene was definitely uncomfortable. A lot of times when games discuss loneliness, it's from the perspective of a man, but this was a very different sort of view. I don't think I can do this analysis justice by myself, so I'm just going to let the author's words, which you can read in the devlog, speak for themselves. The ending sequence also carries special meaning. Yandere-Chan is a portrayal of an identity that I had as a child. When I stopped getting enough attention growing up and felt worse about it, the realization came. It had to be earned. That's when first crushes came, and I wanted to make them reciprocal at all costs. This drove me to the other extreme, of giving up as much of myself as I could. Even the slightest signs of attention were enough for me, which I now see as nothing more than a bone being thrown to a dog. That extreme is Dandere-Chan. She's the person to let nasty things happen to her in her own room. The author's words reveal that both Yandere-Chan and Dandere-Chan are almost sort of autobiographical, a truly raw and honest depiction of how low someone can fall when they're starving for love. They present themselves as visual novel characters to desperately try and win that love from the player, even if it is superficial and predetermined. Yandere does this by taking but never giving, and Dandere does this by giving but never taking. Throughout the game, both Yandere and Dandere express a sort of cynicism and hatred for the dating sim genre, perhaps because they know how unhealthy it all is, but they can't stop themselves from playing along. Small tangent, but while reading the reviews of the game, I saw that one big complaint people had is that this game is tagged as a psychological horror, but honestly, I don't really understand that. I think this game is a psychological horror, not from our perspective as the player, but rather from the perspective of the love interests. I at least feel that the life of a dating sim character probably would feel like psychological torture, constantly having to act out dates and pretend that you love random people. In any case, we are almost finished with the game. The last part is divided into 3 discs, each with 2 sides, diving deeper into the psychology of Yandere and Dandere. Disc 1 Side A is a conversation between the protagonist and someone named Alter Ego, who states that she can't live without dates, but the protagonist gives her a cold response, saying that they hate her. Alter Ego then says, "If nobody needs me, I won't have a reason to live." Similarly cold, the protagonist ends off with saying, "You don't deserve to be loved simply for existing." This disc is the bad ending of the first date, where we see the player completely reject the love interest. I think that you could also interpret this disc as being the author having a conversation with her past self, specifically the Yandere version, since the alter ego expresses a desire to go on dates just like Yandere does. The author tells Yandere that she can't just live off of the love of others. She has to put in some effort and isn't entitled to anything, hence the "you don't deserve to be loved for simply existing." Disc 1 Side B takes on a slightly different sort of reflection, a monologue about a one-sided love. "I can't shake off this feeling. I've been haunted by nightmares, but everything changed when you appeared. I finally saw a happy dream and experienced the horror of reality, because your kind and caring image from the dream was just a fantasy. It had nothing to do with the real you. That's why I can only continue watching from a distance and keep on dreaming. Do I even need to tell you how painful it is? And yet, for the sake of these moments when you're close, I'm ready to keep deceiving myself forever. It doesn't matter where those feelings came from or whether they have any worth. Since I'm unable to let go, I'll cherish them, and I will keep on loving you just because you exist. As simple as that. In a way, this progression reflects the author's statement I discussed earlier, with 1A reflecting how she learned that attention had to be earned. Now 1B is the second part. That's when the first crushes came, and I wanted to make them reciprocal at all costs. The ending statement also acts as a foil to the end statement of 1A. Disc 2, Side A similarly depicts some self-reflection, this time with Dandere. The alter ego tells some pretty striking advice to her, stating, "Love isn't worth giving up everything you have. That's why people call their partners their significant other. Both parties need to contribute something. Stop relying on others. Take better care of yourself. You're the only person who's going to be by your side from the day you are born till the day you die." In Disc 2, Side B, Dandere takes this advice to heart, stating, "Sure, there were circumstances that held me hostage for most of my life, but I don't want to shift the blame onto them anymore. In the end, I'll always be the one responsible for who I become. It's my life after all. It's the only life I'll get. Why should I waste it desperately trying to get on someone's good side when I already have myself? Right, that's who I should be afraid of losing." This is some real growth, as just prior, the protagonist was saying, "If nobody needs me, I won't have a reason to live." Now she is realizing that she is the most important person in her life. Disc 3 is the last disc, and Side A strangely doesn't have any characters on screen, perhaps symbolizing what is to come next. The voice states, "I left them, but, to be honest, I'm not sure if I did the right thing. Loneliness is unbearable." This scene feels like a breakup, but perhaps it isn't a romantic breakup. Rather, it may be the protagonist breaking up with her personas, Yandere and Dandere, and trying to learn to live as herself. This idea is suggested by Disc 3, Side B, which features the protagonist with a haircut we haven't seen before, much shorter than the others, perhaps symbolizing that this is her truest self, not dressed up for any date. She apologizes. "Sorry, I'm having trouble gathering my thoughts. You probably have no idea what's going on anymore. I love making things difficult, especially when I don't need to. Did I really need an alter ego to express the feelings that have been bothering me for a long time? Well, I realized something. I shouldn't shift the blame for my worries onto them. I've waited so long that I didn't even notice how it became my only reason for living. Because of this, all the happiness I could have found in the present avoided me." This apology shows a lot of growth, with her stating that she doesn't need to hide behind alter egos anymore. She can face reality. However, before she can truly find happiness, she needs to figure out one more thing: her role as a visual novel character. She reflects on how her world is black and white and relates it to her feelings, how they aren't black and white, so she can't understand them, how she lives in the black and white world because she doesn't belong in the colorful world, how she's not a human, just a visual novel character. In the end, she states, "A person as useless as me should just disappear." Thankfully, you as the player step in, metaphorical clipboard in hand, to interrupt. "A person. Do you really see yourself as a character in a visual novel?" She responds, "Of course." But the player fires back. "Why aren't your lines from the perspective of the protagonist anymore? Thanks to your feelings, you were able to find the strength to stay human. You preserved the most precious thing you have. Your heart. It's lonely, and that's why it seems useless to you. But there's always a person who cherishes your feelings more than anything, and that person is you." With your therapy session finally paying off, she thanks you for staying here all this time, for listening to her. You give her one more piece of advice. It's not simply enough to declare your feelings. They don't exist in the physical world, but you continue to keep them inside. Are words alone really enough? At last, she cries and thanks you. My heart can finally be free. I promise to take care of myself from now on, and I promise to remember you as someone who once saved my life. Thank you, and we shall meet again. In the end, she decided to abandon the role she played in the visual novel and live her life as a person seeking real love. In perhaps the ultimate fourth wall break, she's gone. The game will not let you play again. Reflexia leaves us with a powerful message about loneliness, that you must first love yourself. You can't chase a fake love to fill the void. In a way, the protagonist is meant to represent us, the players of dating sims. The game warns against becoming like a visual novel character, overly easy to please, offering up what little you have for someone else's enjoyment, and of being empty. After all, hollow people are hard to connect to. If you first love yourself and find things in this world that you love doing, making sure that doing nothing isn't your main hobby, then you have a way better chance of actually finding love from someone else. The last thing I need to talk about is what I mentioned at the very start, this game's connection to milk inside a bag of milk. If you read a little further into the devlog I talked about, the game's creator, Mahal Maiden, reveals that all along, this game had a love story behind it. The part with the discs, the bad endings to all the dates, they weren't a part of the original script. That whole depressive angle got added when I fell in love with someone, unrequited at the time, and I couldn't tell anyone about it. Thankfully for her, and perhaps for all of us as well, she later in the log shares, nevertheless, all secrets sooner or later came to light. Months later, the feelings invested in this short story reached the right person, and now I finally feel happy. Here's where I thank Nikita Kryukov for publishing this visual novel, and just for being himself. You supported me when I first started writing for your game. You gave me the confidence to compete in the contest, and helped the resulting visual novel find its readers around the world. You're also a wonderful friend and my biggest love. Thank you. In the end, the author of the game was able to take her own advice and lessons to heart, and through her visual novel, could have a happy ending. And with that, I think I have said all I have to say about Reflexia Prototype version for now. Thank you to all my Patreon and Ko-Fi supporters, and see you next week.